Hello, Bronco Nation. It's great to be here with you once again. My name is Garrett Jones. I'm part of the broadcast team here at Boise State. I'm with two guys who really need no introduction. The Director of Athletics, Jeremiah Dickey, and the recently promoted, congratulations, Deputy Athletic Director and Chief Administrative Officer of Bronco Pro, Cody Gogler. And Jeremiah, let's jump right into it. The reason we're here today is talking about Bronco Pro, which is your vision for the next chapter of Boise State athletics as far as revenue sharing and revenue generating for the Broncos athletic department. If you don't mind starting there, just generally speaking, what is your vision for Bronco Pro and what do Bronco fans need to understand about it?
Yeah, it's similar to everything else that we do here. We want to be ahead of the curve. We want to control what we can control and define our own expectations. We've been working on it, and it's a testament to Cody and our team. We've been working on it probably for over a year. We've announced things over the course of this year that I believe is a competitive advantage for us when I'm comparing ourselves to and our team to others in this industry, and I'm really excited of what this means for our student athletes and obviously Cody and recent promotion, and congrats to Cody. Very much earned and deserved. This is the next chapter for us. I say it all the time, what's next? And this is something that is important to us as we want to have a high level of competitive excellence in our industry. We want to compete for championships. This is the industry, change that I think every AD is adapting to. And I'm just really grateful for the infrastructure and the foundation that we have coming off of the collective and NIL, and how now it's going to tie back into control from a department standpoint for us to put our best foot forward and serve our student athletes.
And Cody, like we mentioned, you're going to be heading up this project. Talk about your role, if you can, and what you foresee for Bronco Pro in years to come.
Yeah, thanks, Garrett. And Jeremiah, obviously really grateful for the opportunity, and it's really cool to see this just continue to come together and evolve. I remember when we were as the leadership team doing our offsite planning meeting last year and all trying to figure this out as a team. We knew this day was coming in college athletics, and I'm really excited and energized about the opportunity to lead out on it for our team, so appreciate the opportunity. And, Garrett, it's an important question. Like, I think credit also needs to be due to those that actually built the foundation for NIL here at Boise State. NIL has now been a thing since 2021, and we have some people that were on our team that really built what is actually just being rebranded, the evolution of NIL here at Boise State and Bronco Pro with our initial Boise State NIL program. And so Joe Nickel and Mike Walsh and Sydney Bruner, who's now a part of our first ever Bronco Pro staff, they came in 2021 and built out the ACE program, the Advocacy, Content, and Education program that ended up winning essentially the national championship of NIL at the first ever NIL Summit Awards in 2022. So when you think about serving our student athletes and what we've already accomplished in the past 3 years and our competitive advantage, Bronco Pro was essentially just built on the model that group built. And so when you think about, when you try to simplify it for Bronco Nation and prospective student athletes and our current student athletes and our staff, Bronco Pro is essentially the brand where all NIL activity will take place here at Boise State. We want to be really, really detailed and strategic and successful in three main areas in Bronco Pro. Number one is the new era in college athletics. That's the revenue sharing piece, the franchise model. We've aligned a staff, and I'm sure we'll talk more about the structure that we believe will fully support all of our student athletes and how we develop our budget and how we ultimately execute NIL agreements with our student athletes. But really the best part about NIL, which has been in place for a few years now, the authentic NIL piece, pairing a student athlete's growing, evolving brand with other brands, whether that's here in the Valley, in the region, or even nationally. We have some of the most marketable student athletes that the entire collegiate athletics industry has to offer at this point. And so we want to amplify their brands, and we will still be really involved and focused on doing that for our student athletes. And then the final piece, these are still student athletes, all the way from 17 years old to 23, 24 years old. This is such an impressionable time in the development of their futures. We want to make sure that no matter how deep we get into rev share, what we do in the authentic NIL place, that they are preparing themselves for life. And that ties into our Bronco Life program for financial literacy, making sure that we're providing the appropriate tax support. Like, we can go on for quite some time talking about just that piece. But really simplifying it, you have the franchise piece we need to be elite at, the authentic NIL piece, which ties into revenue generation, and then serving our student athletes with educational resources and programming.
Very well said, Cody. Very well said. Jeremiah, back to you for a sec. One of the things that is kind of a hot button topic, I should say, in athletics right now is the House settlement. So if you don't mind explaining for the fans, how much does that tie into this, and what updates can you provide about that House settlement and what it will impact as far as Bronco Pro in years to come?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to find out more information here shortly. We will have some direction, this April. Obviously, we've been preparing for it since last year, and essentially allows us to share revenue with our student athletes, and that in some ways provides us guardrails. It is still chaotic from an industry standpoint, but this allows us as a department to best position ourselves, and appropriately so within the rules, to be able to provide resources to our student athletes that will be of value to them and ultimately impact us from a competitive standpoint. It is very much a part of recruiting now, in the transfer portal and so on and so forth. So, I'm looking forward to the House settlement, and, I do believe it will pass, and we will get, at least a runway with defined expectations as we move forward into this new era of college athletics.
Absolutely. And Cody, you mentioned your team. Obviously, you're promoted to the Bronco Pro Chief Administrative Officer, but you've also got several faces who have been around here for a while. Ali Lepore is going to be your Director of Athletics Administration, and Bronco Pro. Lou Major specifically is a football-specific role as the Assistant Athletic Director for Football External Affairs and Bronco Pros. Sydney Bruner, you mentioned, is the NIL Business Manager, and Bronco fans might recognize Mikey Thompson from playing on Leon Rice's men's basketball teams not too long ago. He's going to be a graduate assistant for Bronco Pro. What do you like about that team, and what do you envision for this team and all those different aspects of it moving forward?
Yeah, we talk a lot about it takes a team, and so when we built this out, especially at the, at what would currently be considered the Group of Five level, although we very much believe in our ability to continue to elevate the national brand of Boise State athletics, and believe we had a seat at the table with the best brands. There aren't unlimited resources, and with that, sometimes when it comes to something like NIL, you may have one or two people really focused on amplifying that at a respective institution. And when we put our plan together, dating back to last year, it was, hey, if we're going to go try to be great, let's make sure that we're appropriately staffed and we have the right infrastructure. And so football is extremely important, and authentic NIL for all of our student athletes is extremely important. And when you have 350 student athletes, is it really fair to assume that one or two people are going to be building out NIL revenue sharing agreements, meeting with agents, working through budget opportunities and scenario planning with coaches, while also going out and amplifying brands? And so our first decision in this process was to build out the appropriate team, which takes an investment. And a funny little story about that, I tell this story literally, how do we build this out? If anyone has ever seen the movie Jerry Maguire. So you've seen Jerry Maguire.
Yep.
Have you seen Jerry Maguire?
Absolutely.
Okay, so great. So at least we've all here seen Jerry Maguire, one of my favorite movies. So Tom Cruise, Jerry Maguire, sports law firm agent, one of the big sports law firms in the country. He just kind of has this moment where he's tired of doing it everyone else's way, and he's like, all right, I need to go do my own thing. And I'm going to be a sports agent. I'm going to do it the way that I want, the way that my heart beats. And I'm going to start this new law firm, this new sports law firm. So he stands up in the middle of his current law firm, and that's where he had this big moment where it's like, I'm out, and I who's with me, and so he ends up marrying at that time, another person within that law firm. She stands up, and I'm drawing a blank on what her name was, but I believe it was Renee Zellweger.
Yeah,
sounds right.
Was the actress. She stands up and she's like, I'm in. I'll come with you. And they grab a bag and put a goldfish in there, and then they're out and they go start their own sports law firm. Well, Ali, you mentioned Ali Lepore. That was our Jerry Maguire moment. Wherever we got back from a leadership team meeting, and I was like, okay, we have all these things that we need to do. We have all these meetings that we need to schedule. We have all these documents and these schedules and calendars. And I was overwhelmed. And I was just like, I need some help. And Ali, literally unsolicited, came into my office one day, and she was like, can you tell me more about Bronco Pro? I think I have a skill set, She does such a great job for our leadership team and overall for the department with our personnel services and specifically for JD. She was like, I think I can help you and I want to. And so then our team went from overnight, without even thinking about this, went from 1 to 2. And so it started with Allie. Loved that story, and we built it from there. We really felt like we needed someone in football because of how much of a beast football is, and how complex this will become with agents and contracts. And so we identified someone that's a rock star within football already that has great relationships with our coaches and our staff and people within the community, and that's Lou Major. And so we got that done. And then we really wanted to focus on the authentic NIL piece. And so our great partners at Bronco Sports Properties, they've done this at a few different places around the country, created a position within their team to go out into the community and work with our sponsors for NIL opportunities for our student athletes. And luckily for us, we were able to hire Sydney Bruner, who actually built our NIL program. So she's already got the blueprint for what we've built here at Boise State. So that was huge for us. We got that done about a month ago. And then we wanted to bring someone in that really understands the collegiate landscape, digital content, NIL marketplaces, and also can help us with revenue generation. And so we're currently going through a process right now of bringing on that next team member. And then the glue guy, Mikey Thompson. He did it as a basketball player. He's already doing it here as our GA. Mikey's our glue guy. He's going to be the connector to all of our student athletes. He's going to build out a brand profile for everyone. And when you think about having that concierge touch, someone that you can trust as a student athlete, someone that you can relate to, you just pick up the phone and call them. We want Mikey to be that person for all 350 of our student athletes. And so that's our team of 6. And now we're ready to go.
Sounds like a fantastic group. Jeremiah, back to you for a second. You talked earlier about how what's next is such a big part of your vision. You always say that you want to be on the cutting edge. I have a quote here that you said in the initial release, college athletics is constantly changing, and it's been in a state of constant change for the better part of the last decade. Boise State will stay ahead of the evolution of college athletics by continuing to plan the work and work the plan. How big is Bronco Pro in that vision of the quote that you just mentioned?
It's difficult to put words to it.
Yeah.
This is the new era of college athletics, whether some people like it or not, and we've chosen to embrace it. And we're really consistent with our messaging and and I think our vision. That what's next mentality and defining our own expectations, or they're going to be defined for you, and really embracing what's ahead of us and choosing to see it as an opportunity. And Cody talked about it, the financial literacy program, the connection to academics, preparing our student athletes for life. There is opportunity through this process to do all of the above. And I feel like, based on the current success we've had and what the future holds for us, that we are well positioned to do epic, and that's always going to be our driving force. It doesn't mean we're always going to win. It doesn't mean that we're always going to win championships, etc. But we are going to position ourselves. We are going to do everything in our power to support our coaches, to support our student athletes, to support our staff, and to serve Bronco Nation. And that holds true. And Bronco Pro is the next iteration of what that looks like. So I'm really excited for what that means for our department and how it puts us in a better position to compete on a national level. And then I'd be remiss, just in case Jake is listening, Allie does have a boyfriend. Cody is not marrying her, but Jake is.
We mentioned that.
Yeah, but Allie's outstanding, and every person that Cody mentioned, they've been a part of this, and they're here because they want to be Broncos. We've never had what everyone else has. And you got to really want to be a Bronco. And that's something that we're embracing. And I think our student athletes and our community, Bronco Nation in general, feel that from us.
Yeah. Maybe a question for either one of you. When fans think about this era, right, the revenue sharing era, the post-house settlement era, the NIL era, and now within Boise State, the Bronco Pro era, I think it's kind of ambiguous, right? You don't really know what to expect. What do you guys feel like the future is going to look like as far as being a fan and engaging with the sports they love in this new era that we're set to enter?
Yeah, when you look at college athletics specifically, and the monetization of college athletics and how we serve our student athletes, how we serve our donors, how we consume college athletics, like everything has continued to evolve over the past 30, 40 years, and we're at that next iteration where comfortably, if we do this the right way as an industry, we can take care of our student athletes. And there's always going to be there's always going to be the ability to figure out what your competitive edge is at the collegiate athletics level. It used to be, all right, what does our facilities portfolio look like? Do we have the best facilities in the country? Do we offer the best financial aid opportunities? Does cost of attendance apply at your institution? Are you going to fund summer school? If you think about these things that have happened over time in college athletics, this really is the next piece to it where, how willing are you and your fan base and your donors, how willing are you to pour into your student athletes? We are at a crossroads right now in college athletics where we will never, whether it's at Boise State, and I believe anybody in Jeremiah's chair would say the same thing, we will never stop putting our best foot forward to change lives and put an experience in a package in front of a student athlete that enhances their academic opportunities and their identity development and who they are going to become after college. Now, for us to be competitive and stay in progress and in line with what are the expectations of our fans, we have to make sure that we're aggressively generating revenue and putting opportunities in front of student athletes so that they'll still choose to come to Boise State. And that's where the competitive advantage will be for us. We have a great culture here. We have a blueprint and a DNA and a pedigree within not just our football program, but the institution of being innovators, doing things differently, and ultimately putting something in front of our athletes that can be greater than just 40 minutes on a court, right, or 4 quarters on a football field. And so for our fans, I think the question is, how bad do you want it? And we know that Bronco Nation wants it bad, and we just ask that you will continue to trust Jeremiah's vision on what we need to do to retain the best and the brightest student athletes at Boise State.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
It's very well said, and Cody hit on a few points that I want to emphasize. Our secret sauce is still culture. That is a priority for us, and this ties into that. People are our greatest asset. That includes our student athletes, and so when I think about the current changes and then changes that will come, because I do feel our industry has somewhat of a difficulty living in sanity. But like I said, this provides some guardrails, but not much changes for us. Culture is still a priority, and how we serve our student athletes, staff, and supporters is a priority. And our people are our greatest asset, and there's a lot that are included in that. And we're going to continue to prepare these kids for life, and that is our why. And now we actually have maybe more of an opportunity to compete at a very high level because of what we're doing in this space and how it's going to ultimately impact our student athletes. And so it was very well said. And I think that's where I don't feel the change maybe as much as others, because it still aligns with everything that we've been doing, the monetization of our operation. I've been saying that since the very beginning. Bottom line, we need Bronco Nation to continue to step up. We need our campus partners to continue to step up. We need our state and our community to continue to step up. That goes without saying. And whether we were doing this or not, that would still hold true. And so as I look at it, all we're doing is continuing taking steps forward and defining expectations that will ultimately benefit all involved.
Yeah. This is overall as a program, it's kind of got like we used the word kind of ambiguous earlier, it's got kind of a flowing timeline, right? As I understand, this is going to be something that's rolled out over time. Sure. Or do you guys anticipate kind of a hard date of, okay, every student athlete's going to be served by Bronco Pro by X date? Do you guys have a timeline in mind yet for as far as rolling out this project?
The House settlement is approaching that final step, and the hope is that settlement will get to a place of finality on April the 7th. I think that's the expectation of the industry, that on April the 7th, this will move forward. And essentially what that means is if the House settlement is finalized and approved, beginning July 1 of this year, each Division I institution that has opted in will start that process of sharing revenue with their student athletes. We've actually, as an industry, began that process. We began that process way back in the fall because our football signing class, just like everyone else's, was in December. The transfer portal opened at the end of the football season, or at the end of the Fiesta Bowl specifically for us. And so we've actually been working with our our head coaches on a timeline and a progression that has us ready in real time right now today, having conversations with our student athletes and their parents, and at times with their agents, to where we have been working with our inside and members of outside counsel to develop our specific and unique agreement that we will have, our contract template for Bronco Pro, and we will be prepared to put that in front of our student athletes immediately. For us, we think our competitive advantage here at Boise State will be making Bronco Pro more about just revenue sharing, but about the holistic student athlete. But as part of that, we want every single student athlete to be a Bronco Pro athlete. And so we will put a revenue sharing agreement in front of every single Boise State student athlete, which is, from what we've heard, it's kind of a coin toss at other schools if they're going to do that or not. It's an investment on our part that may not have true ticket sales or media ROI, but that makes us different. And so what we're currently doing in our timeline is we're meeting with every sport program this week and next week to provide them an update on the House settlement. I got a new pair of glasses. They keep falling down.
They look good. They look good.
Thank you. And we're meeting with every sport program over the next 2 weeks on the House settlement and what they should expect as student athletes to see happen in April. And then we're letting our student athletes know that we will be putting in an agreement opportunity in front of every student athlete, which will give us the opportunity to help them with the group licensing opportunities, their individual license, and essentially make every single Boise State student athlete a Bronco Pro athlete. And then when you think, and our fans are probably curious about, the football program and our basketball programs, and traditionally that's 85% of what you budget as a department is going to those two programs. That's a huge deal for us. And so Spencer's been awesome. Like, we've been working with Spencer on this now for, almost 6 months. He's got a plan for football. And we're going to get in front of the team in the middle of spring ball and address this and hit it head on. And this is who we are going to be at Boise State. And then it's just all about having conversations. It's about having conversations and taking what has been delivered to us, as we've learned, a professional model, and tailoring it to 18 to 23, 24-year-old young men and women who we do not ever want to or will we ever take advantage of. And so we're going to do it the right way, and it will take us from April the 8th all the way until August to make sure that everybody's on their contracts. And then we're off and running and on to the next thing for next year's signing class as we get into the fall.
That's fantastic. And Jeremiah, back to you for a sec. I know it's kind of cheesy asking, the where do you see yourself in 10 years, maybe within Bronco Pro, right? 10, 15, 20 years down the line, where do you see this program, and how much do you hope that this is maybe kind of a blueprint or a cornerstone for what the future of collegiate athletics, not just at Boise State, but around the country, is going to be within this program?
Yeah, I think this program is being watched. I've taken a lot of calls from a number of ADs and just curiously questioning what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're doing it. And so that's a point of pride. We hold ourselves to a high standard in terms of being innovative, and that blue turf every day that we see it is a good reminder. Like, we need to stay ahead of the curve and maybe think and do things a little bit differently than others. And I think that because of the team Cody talked about in terms of the NIL recognition that we received in the past, we've been high on a lot of people's radars in terms of our foundation and some of the programming that we're creating. And so, I don't necessarily look 10 years out right now. I'm looking 5 years out. There's still a lot of unanswered questions. There's, the number of lawsuits, there's too many to even mention. That's why the House settlement is so important to us. And ultimately, we're leaving ourselves the ability to pivot. Like most decisions, there is no perfection. A lot of this is going to be trial and error, and we're going to consistently put our best foot forward for the greater good of our department and our student athletes. And so where I see it 5 years from now, we're going to continue to refine and define, and it's ready, aim, fire. It's what's next. And I feel very confident in his leadership, our collective team's leadership, in terms of what that's going to look like. But I think there's some pieces of this that we don't also control. Right. What is the federal government's involvement going to be? How is Title IX going to be impacted? If it's going to be impacted, antitrust, and you've heard people comment on collective bargaining and creating standards across the industry, as student athletes do have agents, and there's still a lot more questions than answers, and we're taking it day by day, controlling what we can control, and I'm really excited to see how this program grows, and ultimately, we're also watching every other school, seeing what they're going to do, and we're not necessarily a copy and paste industry anymore, but you learn a lot from what others are doing through success and failure, and that's the commitment that I know I have of our team. That we're going to continue to do the work, and if we need to pivot, we'll be prepared for that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you both are extremely busy, so we're about to let you go. But one last thing before we do, from each of you, if you don't mind, one last thing or anything really that you'd like somebody watching to know about Bronco Pro that maybe we haven't covered yet.
Yeah, and well, first of all, I would like to just take this opportunity to congratulate Jeremiah Garrett, and I hope that this gets chopped up and gets put out there. But the reason why we're doing Bronco Pro and being so aggressive and innovative and different is that he's not afraid to take challenges and take risks and invest into challenges, and with that comes due recognition as well. And so this past week, Jeremiah was informed that he was a recipient of one of the FBS NACDA Athletic Directors of the Year, and also a nominee for the Sports Business Journal Athletic Director of the Year. And as someone who has worked with this guy now for 8 or 9 years, it's just been fun to watch him grow. So JD, congratulations, brother. I'm really happy for you, and thank you for what you've done for Bronco Pro and just our department.
Well, thank you. As you all know, it makes me uncomfortable. Team is important to me, and I'm very fortunate and grateful and honored, and mainly due to the people I have around me. It takes a team, and I guess, Garrett, to your question, when I think about, the decisions that student athletes have nowadays and the options and the opportunities that they have, which is a good thing. My hope is that they fully understand our commitment to them and their families, and their growth, because it is important to us. We want to prepare them for life, and it's not a transaction. We're never going to be a transactional department or school. We are committed, and it's about the relationships, and I hope that Bronco Nation understands that. We're not finished. It's always what's next, and there's so much more for us to be able to do. And that support that they provide, and what they did this past year with 21 straight sellouts in soccer, and averaging over 1,000 at gymnastics and volleyball, and 7 sellouts in football, and selling out season tickets in men's basketball, attendance in women's basketball. I just saw that today. That's a testament to Bronco Nation and their buy-in. And I don't believe we've scratched the surface on what we can accomplish here, and I'm really excited what the future holds.
Absolutely.
And what I would tell you on the one thing that Bronco Nation may not know about Bronco Pro is there's got to be an engine or fuel that is pouring into Bronco Pro for us to continue to afford to elevate what we can offer for our student athletes. The salary cap or the NIL cap for each school is going to start out at $20.5 million. I mean, that's any Division I institution that opts in. It will have the opportunity to get there or near as close as they can to that $20.5 million. And so we've actually been very intentional about maximizing that, and we've built out we've built out in a partnership with the University Foundation. We've built out a for-profit C Corp company that has an actual board that we've formed called it will be called Bronco Athletics Growth Solutions. And what we're looking to do with Bronco Athletics Growth Solutions is to go out into the marketplace, whether it be private equity or credit opportunities, non-traditional revenues, investment funds, mixed-use development projects, literally almost like a venture company or a company that is solely focused on non-traditional revenue growth, so that we can actually fuel Bronco Pro. And so as Bronco Pro gets up and running, in parallel, Bronco Nation will start to learn more about Bronco Athletics Growth Solutions, and it just kind of speaks to the people here at Boise State that are willing to take risks, and for us to fuel a NIL cap we may not just have it sitting in a checking account to go get, but we're going to use Bronco Athletics Growth Solutions. Obviously, Bronco Nation is a huge part of this by purchasing their season tickets and making themselves a part of this process by making their own investments. And I think that's how you're going to see us rise above and beyond what others in our industry have to have the best and brightest student athletes.
Absolutely. Very well said. I think the one thing to take away from this entire conversation, Bronco Nation, is this team is not hesitating going into the revenue sharing era. They're going full speed ahead. Like Jeremiah always says, work the plan and plan the work. Guys, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate getting to learn about Bronco Pro this afternoon.
Thanks, Garrett.
Thanks, Garrett. Thank you.
As Jeremiah always says, keep an eye out, Bronco Nation, for what's next.